Welcome to our very first Ask Parse Anything. Today we have 3 developer advocates here on deck answering some of your questions. And be sure to tune in to the very end for a very special Parse surprise. I'm here today with Eric Nakagawa, one of our developer advocates here at Parse. When will it be possible to upload a CSV to an existing class in Parse?
That's a good question, Nancy. Currently, you can upload a CSV into Parse for new objects. If you want to update objects, we suggest you use JSON. There's a couple ways to do this. The first way is you could upload the CSV as a new class, export that out, and then re-import that back into Parse. Or you could use a community module from NPM or a node module that allows you to convert a CSV into JSON and then upload that.
When will we be able to see the data in our Parse storage, such as images and other things like that?
So, interesting story about the data in your storage is that we considered building a file viewer a couple years ago, but we never built it. For folks that really want this feature set, you can use Express to expose the different objects within your application. Just be sure to implement the proper security so that this information just can't be exposed to anybody.
How can we make HTML emails for user authentication and password reset?
That's a tough question. Well, we already have built in some text-based email reset features. If you want to build your own to make it look differently, a couple ways to do this would be to use Express.js, some custom cloud code. You would write functions to verify that the person owns the email address and set the user object appropriately. You also need to set or create functions to generate these, like a token or something that is uniquely identifiable that is sent to these users. But yeah, that's how you do that.
Can videos be stored on Parse?
Yes, videos can be stored on Parse. The interesting thing about our Parse storage product is you can store files up to 10 megabytes. So it could be audio, file, videos, documents. Anything that's up to that amount of storage is okay. Videos are one thing that you could host out of Parse. So yes.
I'd like to implement a way for users not to be able to reuse the same passwords using Parse. How should I go about doing this?
So that's a really good question. Built into Parse is a secure method for resetting and managing your users and their user passwords. We don't recommend that you change this, but if you want to, you could do this by creating your own functions or algorithm to hash passwords and store them, and then create your own functions again to verify whether or not these passwords have been used in the past. It would take a significant amount of work, but it is possible on Parse.
We have a new feature request. Trigger an email when a row is created in a given table.
So you can already do this in Cloud Code by using a before save or an after save and working with one of our partners like SendGrid, MailChimp, or one of the other email providers. You can determine when and who you want to send emails to. It's already there.
Is it possible to schedule a background job to run once a month, for example, the first day of the month?
So yes, you can. Using your Parse Cloud Code jobs, you're able to run any job at a certain period of time. What I would do is I would check that the particular day of the month, the current month, is the day that you would want to run this function, and if it matches, run it. If you start a job at the beginning of the month on the 1st, you check every day until that month or day of the month matches the 1st again. And when that does, you fire off that job. If you want to switch to whenever that job or whenever that time period was created and check that day, you can do that as well.
How does Parse convert the time inserted into a column of data type time?
So in Parse, we don't actually convert the time. We keep everything in UTC. So if you are in a different time zone, you have to be able to adjust the data to match your particular user.
Do you have any plans to add servers in Asia?
We don't have any servers in Asia at this stage. We also don't have any immediate plans to add servers. But considering the amount of growth that we have in Asia and the APAC region, we are still developing some plans to decide how we're going to move forward the features in that area. We want to be available everywhere that our developers are building their apps and where their users are. So in the meantime, we are working to speed up and lower the latency for users and app users in Asia. But yeah.
I'm here with Fosco Morado, one of our developer advocates here at Parse, answering your questions for Ask Parse Anything. Is phone number verification a planned feature? If so, can you publish a timeline?
Well, I mean, phone number verification is a great feature. We do email verification. We provide that as a service. I don't think that we're going to get into doing phone number verification as a first-party feature. But it's certainly possible to use Twilio to build this type of verification yourself. I suggest taking a look at the example app we just released, which is called AnyPhone, which is a nice iOS, Swift, and a web app that allows people to log in with their phone number, get a verification code, and it'll create or reuse existing user accounts.
What does the Parse team think about the Apple Watch? And what does the Apple Watch mean for Parse push notifications?
Well, several of us on Parse have Apple Watches. I have one, and everybody seems to love them. One great thing about the Apple Watch is that you don't need to do anything special to get your push notifications to show up. They just work. If users enable it to go to their watch, there it is. So if you're already using Parse Push, your Apple Watch owning users can already enjoy your notifications on their wrist. If you want to get into Apple Watch development, we recently expanded our SDK to make it very easy to share data between your watch extension and your regular Parse app. So we have a blog, you should check that out, and we'll include a link with the video.
Are you able to link a push notification? Currently, when a user receives our notification and taps on it, they're taken to our app's menu page. Is there a way to direct them to a specific place within our app?
Yeah. What you really need to do there is you need to include some extra piece of information as part of the push payload. So you can do that through our console, or if you're sending it through the API, you send this JSON payload that has the alert, or if it's a silent push, that's a little different. But you send some piece of information. And then in your app, the code that actually triggers when a notification is activated, you can inspect that piece of information and then navigate around your app wherever you need to go.
When will push notifications be added to the Xamarin and Parse SDK?
Well, actually, yeah, that's been an incredible question that's been asked hundreds of times over the years, and we're happy to be able to say that we launched it last week. So now you can use Parse in Parse Push for your Xamarin iOS, your Xamarin Android, and also Unity iOS and Android, and Windows Phone, and more to come. So check it out.
Is it possible to send push messages by using a Geo-Query for selecting which devices are inside a specific geofence? So this could be using Radius or Polygon.
Yeah, that's good. We do support the Radius version. I don't think we actually support Polygon unless it's a box. So what you do there is, as long as you've stored a location, like a geopoint, on their installation object, then when you're sending a push, you can construct a query using some of our constraints, like within miles or within kilometers. And I think another one is like within sphere, where you can provide that and then send push to users matching that record.
How do I send a push notification to users of a specific device model, for example, only to iPhone 6 users?
Okay, that's very similar to the previous question. As long as you store that information on the installation record, so we don't actually retrieve and store the device type, like which phone it is, whether it's an iPhone 6 or a 6 Plus. But if you use some standard pre-existing Apple methods to get that information, or ask the user, however you need to get that, as long as you store that as part of the user's installation record, then again you can write a query and say push to these users matching these constraints.
How can I add a URL for additional info into a push notification with a default alert message?
Okay. It's also very similar, but I think this question is coming because in our web console, where you send a push notification and you type an alert message, we don't give you the ability to add any extra fields. So again, in this case, you need to toggle that from an alert message to a JSON object, and you need to send the whole push object. So there's information online about how to construct the actual APNS payload or Android payload, but you include your alert, and then you can include other fields, and then again in your application, the code that accepts that push notification, you can then inspect it and do whatever you need to do with the data that was submitted.
When will Parse start caring about Swift, for example, to bring it on par with Objective-C?
We love Swift. We care about Swift very much. We have a great engineer that's working on this almost constantly. If you remember, when they announced Swift on a Tuesday, we were one of the first companies to support it, and we had Swift documentation on Friday. As Swift, the language, has evolved, we've continually gone to update our stuff. We released the AnyPhone sample app, which was all in nice modern Swift. And we're doing our best with the documentation. We just open sourced our docs, and so community members are starting to help us fill in what we're missing. And we care very much about Swift, and we will get there.
How often do you push out new iOS SDK releases?
So it's we're roughly once a month. I think we're kind of shooting for like once a month we'll release a new SDK version. We'll work on a few things, and we test things, and then we roll out a new version. That can change if there's like some critical bug or something that we want to push out early, but pretty much once a month.
You're watching Hector Ramos, one of our developer advocates here at Parse, answer your questions for this month's Ask Parse Anything. What's working at Parse like? I imagine it to be something like having a constant coding party in a sea of awesomeness.
Well, it's more like swimming in an ocean of awesome sauce. It's like a cat working at that box factory. No, but seriously, it's great to work with such a great team of awesome engineers, and to be helping out all our users every day building great apps. So yeah, it's great to work at Parse.
What is Hector's favorite color?
Well, that's easy. It's Esteril blue.
Could you say a little bit more about that specific shade of blue?
Look it up. It's a great color. It looks very nice.
What is your biggest app?
Well, my biggest app?
Or Parse's biggest app?
Well, so we don't share specific customers' information, so we cannot say what our biggest app running on Parse is. But you can look at the customer stories on our blog to get a better idea of what kind of apps we run on our platform.
Why don't you back up and restore our data? It seems like that's your core business.
So yeah, actually we do back up our data continuously, and we are able to perform and restore of any data that could be lost due to any incident on our end. What we don't currently do is restore data on an individual app when the data was deleted intentionally or by accident by the developer or its users. What we recommend you do here is try to avoid deleting your data. We have provided many roadblocks to keep you from doing that by accident on the data browser. And also keep various exports of your data available so that you can restore the data yourself. We are thinking of ways we can probably do this for you automatically, but it's not a simple problem to solve. For example, do you want to restore from a snapshot and forego any data that was saved after that snapshot, or do you want to go in and pick and choose what is restored? So if you have any feedback on this, just go to our forums and just let us know. Como criar uma relação entre duas classes e exibir valores das duas classes numa query em JavaScript?
Or, how do I create a relationship between two classes and display the values of the two classes in a query in JavaScript?
Última pergunta. eu recomendo visitar a seção de relações do guia do JavaScript, que tem alguns exemplos de como você pode configurar relacionamentos entre classes usando ponteiros e relações.
We are using Parse for our app, Zither, but want to make the data accessible on our website to users who log in. We've searched and haven't been able to find a step-by-step example for this. Can you explain it in some simple steps?
Sure. So when you store data on Parse, there's many different ways you can access this data. It can be through any of the client-side SDKs or the REST API. So if you're working on a website, you have various options here. It depends on what you're using for your website. Let's say, for example, you're hosting your website on Rails. You might use the REST API or one of the available Ruby gems that are out there to basically read that data from Parse using the REST API. Another option is to host it on Parse using Express. You can read more about Express and how it works with Parse hosting on our website. And basically, you would still need to build out your own website and use our SDKs to get that data out.
What are the differences between users and installations? And how can we have more users than installations?
Yeah, so users and installations are two different types of classes that are automatically created on Parse. And users are quite simple to explain. They're basically users of your app that have signed up for a user account. This could be anything with username and email, or maybe they use Facebook or Twitter to log in. And then you have installations. Installations are used to target and send push notifications to your devices. And while they usually go hand in hand, there's no need for users and installations to basically have a one-to-one relation. For example, depending on the way you coded your app, you may force everybody to sign up for a user account, but maybe you don't ask all of them to opt in to push notifications. So in that case, you would have more users than installations. So yeah, it depends on your implementation.
One of the main issues of using Parse is the limitations of the queries with 10,000 rows. Are there any plans to offer a solution to this issue?
Yeah, so I believe that the issue they are referring to is that by default, when you query a class from Parse, you get up to 100 objects. You can use the limit parameter to get up to 1,000 objects with one query. Now, obviously, it's totally normal to have classes with more than 1,000 objects. So you would then use the skip parameter to basically page through your results 1,000 objects at a time. Now, you can use the skip parameter up to a value of 10,000. After that, if you try to use a higher skip parameter to page past 10,000 objects, you'll get an error. So we've actually answered this question before on our forums, and it's quite simple. If you need to page through more than 10,000 objects, first ask yourself, why are you doing this from the client? Do you really need to go through that many objects? Now, a common use case for this would be if you are performing some sort of data migration. In that case, I recommend that you use the JavaScript SDK, which has the parse.query.each method, which allows you to go through every single object that matches your query, regardless of how many objects there are in that class. Now, if you are not able to use JavaScript SDK and you want to use the REST API, look for my answer in the forums where I basically go through it. The gist of it is you'll want to sort your queries based on creation date, based on created at. And once you get to the 10,000th object, you just grab the created at date of that last object and you use it as a constraint to basically start again from 0 and get the next set of 10,000 objects. You'll see all the steps in the forums.
Will my app crash if my request count is exceeded?
Well, it should not. Apps by default can make up to 30 requests per second. That's the free plan. And you can bump this up to 600 requests per second. And when you, this is actually applied over a 60-second period. So it's actually, you need to send way more than 30 requests to be able to hit this. But once you do, that extra request will return an error. And this error is not different than any other error you might get if there's a connectivity issue or maybe you use an incorrect parameter. So it's just a normal error. And if your code is written correctly and it's able to handle errors correctly, it should not crash. You should just be able to handle that error and deal with it in a nice way.
How do I manage my evolving data model?
That's a good question. I guess what they mean is that how do I manage my app when I'm adding more columns or changing the columns after the app is out there and being used by my customers. And what you do there is don't remove columns once your app is out there, because those clients expect that data to be there. So just add new columns and make sure that your updated versions of the app read from those new columns instead. And that should just work. And if you want a tip to make it easy to basically handle old clients and new clients, is to use before save in Cloud Code to keep the old column in sync with the new one. And that should be just about it.
How do you query for more than 1,000 objects?
Yeah, so that's easy. As I said in the earlier question, by default, you can only query up to 100 objects. You can increase that to 1,000. And in order to get more than 1,000, you just have to increment the skip parameter to get the next set of 1,000.
When will there be an official Ember.js Parse data adapter?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think we will have an official first-party Ember adapter anytime soon, but what we're doing here is we're leaning on the community, where we actually have various Parse Ember adapters out there. One that I recommend that you check out is made by my friends at Blimp. It's up on GitHub. Just search for Get Blimp on GitHub, and the project is called Ember-Parse.
Thanks for tuning in to our very first Ask Parse Anything. We've got lots more video content coming up for you, so like and subscribe to our channel to get the latest and greatest from Parse. And for all of you who have watched to the very end, go to parse.com/coupon/MayAPA for a very special thank you from our team and for all that you've been building. Enjoy!